Hey everyone, welcome to the second Chief Delegate meeting. We had a little warm up in the first meeting and we are bringing the heat this meeting. We're gonna talk about some topics that are important. But first, let's get to the review of the previous meeting action items. Chris, and you, why don't you comment about Ray and the websites?
Yes, unmute. Okay, so I did speak to Ray about the websites. He basically, this is his preference would be to have a small little team that he has oversight of. He suggested this in a post a while back in the Eden members chat that was sort of directed directly to the ENF. Yeah, so basically, and he mentioned he might be collaborating with you, Jesse, on also taking on this website. So you can speak to that if there's any relationship there. But bottom line, he thinks what he'd like to do is put forward a Pomelo pitch to raise funding to then take care of the EdenOS.org website, which is owned and operated by Ray. The content would be approved and changes would be left to us to sort of direct, but he could take on the keeping it updated, having a team help with that as per funding from a Pomelo pitch. The EOS website is owned and operated by Dan. So I don't know exactly how that relates, if we would just get the permission and try to keep them operated together, looking the same. But as it stands, anyway, so that's basically the story there. He would like some funding to do the work on this. And he's thinking a Pomelo pitch would be a way to do that. Since it's a community site, it would probably count as a public good from that perspective, since it's open and non-exclusionary. Yeah, so that's the update there.
And my conversation with him was about EOSBs. If his individual Pomelo grant for the website didn't work out or there wasn't enough funding, then he would be a worker bee for English bee for the English Hive and EOSBs, and get funding perhaps that way to compensate for the potential lack of funding from Pomelo. All right, and the other item from last meeting, Randall, about finding the owners of the 2 Eden on EOS accounts. Do you have any update on that?
Yes, so we were able to, get majority of the owners, and we have an Excel that I can share with you, Jesse, Chris, and anyone that wants to get hold of the people that own the accounts. I have an Excel sheet, so I can share with you guys later. But there was 2 accounts that we were trying to get hold of, and I think Annabella is the person that we wanted to get in contact with, and I think Lovejoy was going to try to reach out to Annabella.
Yeah, I reached out, but I haven't heard back yet. I think she has one of them, but I'm not sure that the other one is hers. She has one of the 2 Twitter accounts. But maybe she has both, but I think it's just one.
Okay.
Unknown at this time.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out.
All right. So now we're going to get into the items for this meeting. And this was inspired by the open mic, this last Monday's open mic, where Lovejoy, myself, Chris, and John spoke about the fact that we need to come up with a mission statement. We need to decide as a group, what are our goals for our term before we talk about anything else like fundraising or how to allocate funds. So our first item here is, what is our mission statement? And we'll go around the room, and what are we looking to achieve as chief delegates? Lovejoy, why don't you start?
Hang on, just one more thing. There was another item that I was looking into for last week's meeting, and that was a sort of EOS account to represent the chief delegates. We could have just went ahead and created our own account, but I thought it'd be cool if we could get in on the sort of Eden namespace, because there's essentially the Eden account just called Eden on the mainnet. And if we think of that as like a sort of top level domain, there's, accounts under that as well. So I reached out to a Clarion team member, and they're looking into if they can get us an account, or if we're better off utilizing a special permission on an existing account, because I think there's already more to it, and there might already be set up already in that fashion as well. So yeah, that's my update from last week.
Sorry, I should have asked before I moved on. Does anyone else have anything from last week that they want to talk about? All right, so let's figure out our mission statement. And this, we may not decide at this meeting, but eventually, perhaps we should consider a plan to submit a proposal that maybe the majority does find consensus on and vote with 2/3 plus one consensus. But let's go around the room here and get our opinions on what our mission statement should be. Lovejoy, what do you think? You're on mute. You're on mute.
I can't do a mission statement on mute, can I? Well, okay, I'm not going to give you like a fully formed mission statement, but I'll just speak to a few items that I think would behoove us to keep in mind as we formulate a mission statement. The first thing that comes to my mind is just that all of us are here because we went through 2 rounds with a handful of other people, and all of those people expressed along the way different things that were important to them. And I think we should keep in mind that we're trying to use consensus, use wisdom of the crowd, and bubble that information up. We're kind of responsible to, I think, make sure that those people that we're representing are heard, and that what's, use this process in a way that allows us to represent the people that put us here. So rather than kind of coming out with some mission statement independent of the group, I think it'd be nice to just let part of our mission statement be that we will represent the Eden community in a way that respects the process that put us here. I'll leave it at that for now.
Okay, Chris, what do you think?
I think we need a mission statement, and I think we should, in sort of taking from what Lovejoy just said, I wouldn't mind canvassing the community to get some input. I know we could always say, well, we're elected, so we should just decide because that's the power we've been given, which is fair. But I think at the same time, I wouldn't mind just putting out a request for suggestions, maybe via a VIO post, and then people can comment on that and just see what the crowd thinks as we come up with what that mission statement might be. Yeah, so I'd like to leave it at that for now before I really come up with any other more formed ideas.
All right, we got 2 passes so far. Aaron, do you have something for us in a mission statement?
I mean, the platform I ran on that everyone seemed to support was, in essence, making things easier. I think there's still a lot of roadblocks that might prevent people from participating in this, in the Eden group and in in EOS itself. This is the EOS group, so while we help EOS, it's going to help Eden, and then while we help Eden, it's got to help EOS. So we need to make sure that as we're making things easier, we're also focusing on balancing these 2 things. So, I mean, yeah, it was onboarding specifically that I ran on, which falls under this big umbrella category of ease of use. But I really believe that is part of the mission, because things are hard right now for an average person. And if we can take hurdles out of people's ways so they can both participate on the network and participate in the Eden process, those are the kind of wins we want to seek out and help them along the way. That's part of making it easy.
Okay. I think that we're trying to figure out as a group, as chief delegates, do we have a specific mission statement for us as chief delegates?
Sure. Doesn't your initiative fit under that? Doesn't Randall's initiative fit under that? I mean, the words can obviously be different, but I don't know.
Okay.
Did you have something different in mind? I couldn't make the Monday night call, so I don't have a lot of the context that maybe you guys have. But I won over a lot of support through the actual election process on this idea with one specific objective that I could do through account creation. But I am open to hearing what others have to say.
I think this is great. Just the way we're going right now, going and hearing what each person has to say. And I think we can form this into a mission statement. But if anyone has a fully formed mission statement that they think is inclusive of everything, or knock yourself out. But this is good. I like this so far.
Yeah, and this is a journey too. Like we're not gonna pick it today. Like this is gonna be a process, as I see it.
Randall, do you have any thoughts?
I think I agree with everything that everyone has said so far. I think more importantly, it's key. It's key that we get the community involved in this. So if we can put it out there in the community and hear what the community also have to say, then we will be. I think we will make it easier on ourselves to come up with something that will represent us and also represent the community. So I think we should just maybe put it out there with the community and hear what the community has to say as well.
Cool. John, why don't you give us a summary as you saw it from our open mic session and your perspective on that conversation?
Yeah. Well, I think on Monday, we sort of had different ideas as to what shoes Eden on EOS is actually meant to fill. How far do we want to go with it, sort of thing? Is it going to be a project that's kind of just focused on gauging community ideas and then funding, projects, towards that? And then maybe having a little bit of, sway and say an EdenOS proxy sort of thing, or do we want to go further where we try gain more governance powers and have greater control over the EOS, network in general? So yeah, again, that's my perspective on what happened there. But I think part of the criticisms, one of the criticisms of the Eden on EOS election was that it was too much of a pitch of your project kind of thing, like because money, essentially all that Eden on EOS at the moment is just you become a chief delegate, or you go head delegate or whatever, and then you get a certain amount of funding towards your project. So because that's all the incentives are, then all we kind of ended up with was just everyone pitching their projects, and then whoever had the best ideas, and convince the person in their the people in their group that they could fulfill it, could get in. Or again, people like Lovejoy that was sort of just passing on ideas as well got in. But I think that was one of the criticisms that we had of the election from a fair few people. So that's not going to change, I don't think, unless we come up with more things, more things at stake, more things that EdenOS can actually influence. So it'll be in my favor to sort of address the governance powers that EdenOS could have over EOS, because again, another criticism of EOS is that it's sort of centralized and that only so little parties can, influence it. And, one of which was, again, the SX Vault hack, where, again, the BPs sort of assemble, they then, undo a hack, and that was it. And then, there was a lot of, anger there of like, how the hell do we do this more democratically? How do we do this in a more, decentralized fashion, rather than, BP sort of controlling everything? And, one of the answers and one of the hopes of fixing that was Eden. So, yeah.
Lovejoy, you're on mute.
Yep. I just wanted to bring up also like that they our very clear mandate is to work on bylaws. So that's going to have to be part of the mission statement for sure.
Yeah.
Coming up with some sort of draft of a set of bylaws that we think. And then I think that's another area where we should take a lot of feedback from the community as well.
So my perspective from the open mic was essentially a risk assessment of us as chief delegates. I think the obvious, or to me at least, like the obvious path is we've been selected to allocate funds to projects, and the funds that we have, perhaps we are more capable than others of selecting projects to fund to help Eden and EOS, Eden and EOS. So I think that's a very kind of broad, simple, like obvious mission statement. And then we also talked about what John had mentioned, controlling more of the governance. If the Eden process, this was something that Dan talked about in his vision, which is the Eden process selecting the block producers, and the block producers going through the Eden process. Obviously, that is a contentious side to take, but I just thought it was interesting to consider, how risk tolerant, how risk averse do we want to be as chief delegates? And me personally, I'm on the, I guess, the leaning towards the more risk averse side. I think it's very early right now, and I think that right now in kind of this we're the first group, and I think if we can get some quick wins, I think that's kind of I know that's certainly what I talked about during the election, to fund some great projects. I think that's a great start for just Eden on EOS in general. All right, so this is obviously recorded, and we as chief delegates are going to be taking suggestions on where do you, the listener, want us to go in our mission statement to improve Eden on EOS. And so the next thing that I think is interesting to talk about is incorporating Eden. So right now, Eden is not a legal entity, and this was also something we talked about on the open mic, that we would have a legal board. So this is kind of our board, the chief delegates is a board, and then there would be a legal board that would deal with all the legal stuff that they need to deal with as Eden as a legal entity. And this came up from Eve. He had commented, what about incorporating Eden as a DAC? Has it already been registered? So no, it hasn't. And so let's go around again and let's share our thoughts on incorporating Eden in a legal fashion. Randall, let's start with you this time.
So the first thing with incorporating Eden is for us to think about the value that it creates. Why are we incorporating Eden? Does it change the perspective of Eden? Does it bring any good, right? So that's the first thing that comes to mind if we are thinking about incorporating Eden. If not, then I was saying earlier, during the course of the week, then we are better off just making the board be a representation of different businesses, I would say, or different entities coming together to form like an organizational association, right? The Eden board, and together as a group, we can pitch an idea to the foundation that, hey, this is the ideas and these are some of the things that we want to do. And then they can fund us, whether it's through Pomelo or through us going to the foundation directly. So that's one thing. The second thing is if we want to incorporate Eden, then we don't want to incorporate Eden as a for-profit, right? Because if we do for profit, then now we're going to have a lot of tax issues to deal with. So if we want to make it as a nonprofit, then maybe we can basically put our names down as the board of directors for now, and maybe incorporate it as a nonprofit and try to get some tax exemption and all that stuff if you want to do that. But if not, if it doesn't bring anything of value, then we're just better off just forming an association, right? And then we just use that to get funding from the foundation, if that's the main goal of forming this DAC or nonprofit, so to speak. So
I should have led with this. So one of the premises is if we're a legal entity, we are able to raise more funds. That's how I see as the biggest benefit of going the legal route. But John, what do you think?
I think we can't, I don't think it's productive that we even discuss the whole company idea until we figure out what the direction that we're actually trying to go, kind of thing. We're sort of asking if we should put chains on the tires, and the question is, oh, okay, are we going into the snow? And we're not sure if we're going there or not. Like, we don't know what direction we're trying to send this ship in. So until we figure that out and and know exactly what we're trying to do, I don't think it's even worth talking about the whole company idea until then, because again, well, like Randall said, it's all about the trade-offs. Is the reward worth the cost? And we cannot accurately determine that until we figure out what the hell it is that we're trying to do. I'm still unsure what Eden on EOS exactly is, so we got to figure that out first.
Okay, so I hear you, but then there's nothing else to talk about then. If we haven't decided on a mission statement. So
yeah, it's
do you
pretty
feel
high
like
on the
there's
priority
nothing
list.
else to...
Okay.
Well,
there's a couple other topics that I was going to bring up. One of which is again the website thing with Ray. Was it Mike that said? Sorry, Chris, that said owned and operated by Ray.
Before we jump to a
yeah.
new topic, can we just finish this?
Right.
Hold on to that. Yeah.
Lovejoy, go ahead.
Well, I echo similar sentiments. My takeaway from this is that we need to form a working group, and I'm going to say that a lot tonight. We need to form a working group to discuss the merits, the benefits, the trade-offs with people that really understand. Like, for instance, when I was in Wyoming recently, I met a woman named Jacqueline Radabow, who's a lawyer specializing in cooperative law and DAOs. And then there's some other people that are really familiar with the Wyoming LLC structure. And of course, Randall brought up the nonprofit possibility. I would recommend that the board meets with, or members of the board meets with these individuals that are expert in this area and get their advice and kind of bring that to the community and bring that back to the board, and just maybe we can arrive at a more informed decision on what shape we might want to take as a community, or as Eden on EOS. Also, I think let's say Eden on EOS, because we're not incorporating Eden. So yeah.
Do you
if
have those connections? Can you reach out to those people and
yeah,
bring back to the okay?
Yeah, I already wanted to set up a call with Jacqueline, and I've spoken with her briefly, or chatted with her briefly, and she seems like a really great resource. And there were other people that presented at the blockchain event in Laramie. That would be really great people to talk to. Personally, if we were going to go in the direction of creating an organization, I've so far, in my limited exposure to all this, been slightly persuaded, I have enough caveats there for you, that the Colorado cooperative law is perhaps the most flexible legal structure with respect to forming a DAO. Essentially, that there may be some drawbacks and limitations to the DAO LLC for our purposes, but we can get into that in more depth.
So I heard you talk about that in your video with Brandon Francher, and if I can ask you, I was just wondering, because I did look into the Wyoming structure, and it had specific language that allowed the organization to be run by a smart contract. Is there that type of language in the Colorado cooperative?
The Colorado cooperative legal framework isn't necessarily like, there's no mention of DAOs in it. It's a law that was passed some while ago now, like 2012 or 2016 or something like that. And there's no specific mention of DAOs to my knowledge in it, but the impression I got from listening to these different presentations that it's a little more flexible in terms of how you can set it up, whereas the DAO LLC may be a little more confining. So like it's like and again, like, this is something we need to have a more in-depth conversation with people that know the law inside and out. But just the impression that I got was that the DAO LLC law is very yeah, it's good for what it is. It's good for smart contracts. It's good for limited liability. But in terms of sort of like nuanced member relationships and stuff like that, the cooperative law may be a little more favorable. So something to get better advice on, I think, before we like pursue one or the other path anyway.
Yeah, and I had read all the statutes of the Wyoming DAO, and I spoke to a legal rep, and well, it was a state government rep in Wyoming, and the rigidity comes from the type of entity that you can incorporate as a DAO. It's very limited. So, for example, you cannot have a nonprofit DAO in Wyoming. But anyways. Aaron, do you agree with John that it's not worth talking about, or do you have an opinion on this whole legal side?
I tend to lean towards what John is saying. I don't think it's our mandate to establish this kind of process. We're not in control of this system right now. We would need buy-in from the Clarion team that developed all of this, because if there was an entity established, it needs to be built into the contracts and part of the system in order to ensure continuity and that organization can continue to exist. We might not all be here for the next election. We don't know what that's going to bring. We could probably research and make a recommendation, but it's going to require buy-in from a lot of other parties to actually execute upon this. And without that buy-in, I don't know if it's worth us spinning our wheels unless those parties are involved with us spinning those wheels.
Yeah, totally. And this is all on the backdrop of proposing and then ratifying the next chief delegates. So our bylaws, the mission statement, all these decisions are going to be proposed and then perhaps executed by the next chief delegates as per more equal animals and Dan's vision.
Right.
And, yeah.
But the next delegates also will not be in control of the system. They will be
Right.
They will be partaking in the system, but they can't just go change how it works without the buy-in from essentially Dan's team, and then in conjunction, the foundation and EOS. Like there's a lot of approvals to get something like this integrated into the bigger flow of things.
But the idea is, if something was proposed by one group of chief delegates and then executed by another, perhaps the assumption is that Dan would support that, because that is the process, that the buy-in would happen if there was a consecutive approvals, but maybe not. But yeah, Lovejoy.
Yeah, I mean, Dan, as it stands, would be free to support it or just veto it. So, but I think it would be worthwhile. You know, I think it'd be worthwhile for us to initiate the process of considering, like, is it, you know, is it a good fit for Eden on EOS to adopt any of these particular legal structures? Does it provide protection to the members? Does it give us more access to funding? Does it, you know, what are the advantages or drawbacks to it? And to do that, we're going to need to consult with people, and it's going to be a process. I'm willing to work on that. It's something I find really interesting, and it's something I want to work on even outside of Eden on EOS. So I'm happy to try and head up a working group with anyone else from this group and anyone else from the greater Eden community to look at these different legal structures and how they might benefit us or not.
Yeah, I think also the first step in all of this is just getting the account set up with a multi-sig. I mean, I think that alone allows this group to seek funding from things like Pomelo. Like we would need to go and figure out what justification above and beyond, what benefit, I guess is the right word, a DAO or some other formal organization would add on top of that. Because as it stands right now, I don't think there's much that it actually adds in terms of value. If our goal is to be able to, as a group, allocate funding for what we believe is the correct direction for things to be going. So, not saying it's a bad idea. I'm just, we have a little itty bitty bite-sized chunk that we can take off right now, and it sounds like we're doing it. This is kind of the evolution of that.
Yeah, and that's what this is for. We're going to get feedback from this. Anyone else?
Yeah, I think Aaron sort of talked a bit about it, but we're kind of in, like a sort of sandbox, and, you know, Dan Larimer is sort of Clarion are sort of maintaining it for us in a sense. So yeah, it's like, I don't know, it feels like we're in a bit of an awkward phase because we're meant to be the sort of heads, but then we're not quite, given that, you know, what was it, I don't know, there's talk about a new election coming out, but again, it's not up to us to determine when the new election comes. So we're the sort of leaders, but we're kind of not. So I don't know. I think we need to kind of engage Clarion and talk to Dan in a chat and determine, you know, where the boundaries are for the sandbox that we're in.
We're the guinea pigs right now. We are trying this out. They are seeing what our struggles are, and then hopefully we'll iterate and improve upon all these hurdles that we come across. So
yeah. So if we figure out what the boundaries are, because, you know, we're talking about incorporating a company, and then Dan and Clarion will be like, fuck no, what are you guys doing? We didn't want you to do that. Like, you know, get back in your lane kind of thing. So, you know, we got to figure out what it is we're meant to do. or what kind of experiments they like us to do in a sense, so we don't go over that boundary and waste time, or try to do something that is not going to be supported by Clarion and Eden.
Chris, we haven't heard from you in a while.
Okay, thank you. So let's see, a few comments on this. In terms of, so I interviewed Luke Stokes 2 hours ago, 2 hours, 40 minutes ago. And so I've recorded that. I will post that for the community with the explicit purpose of asking him what his opinion of this was. He's a resident expert in EOS about DACs. So it was a good fit. He had a lot of great comments. One of them, I asked him specifically like benefits and downside. One of the benefits he said is like, so what happens if an Eden member, one of us, uses our Eden funds to hire a hitman to take somebody out? So because of the lack of limited liability, we're all on the hook for that. And in fact, every single member who's donated 10 EOS has now contributed a small percentage to the funds that were then used to hire a hitman. That's potentially a problem. Doing an organization would then create some legal protection for the members. That's one potential upside. But that being said, there's not a lot of necessarily compelling reasons why we need to register with the government. We're basically a DAC anyway. Like the definition of a DAC, according to Luke, which is a really good one, it's a group of people with a shared goal using technology to achieve those shared goals, which is kind of what we're doing. So we're kind of a DAC already. In terms of the funding piece that you mentioned, Jesse, as being, so for Pomelo, I had asked in the Pomelo group with regards to KYC and what type of entity may submit a Pomelo pitch. Can an MSIG account of multiple people submit a grant? So that's the bare minimum that we could do, have an MSIG account that represents all of us. Can we use that to submit a grant? Or would a DAC be preferred? Is that even different anyway? Or a further legally registered DAO? The answer was, we're still sorting through the nitty-gritty details on KYC, but we are planning to support businesses and organizations. You will need to be able to provide the appropriate documents to pass the KYC process. It would be similar to what Binance requires for business accounts. I haven't looked into what Binance requires, but I'm thinking it's probably going to be more than just hey, we're a DAC.
Yeah,
Okay.
I can probably comment on that a little bit, because we've been doing organizational registrations on exchanges as gray mass. And you basically need to be able to provide proof of incorporation, proof of who you are, I guess, basically. Like, you need passport photos of everybody, like of everybody with significant control. So that's all directors and people with like majority stake in the system. You need like bank statements that also correlate this information, like board. We had to do a like unofficial, like a board meeting essentially, and create a, I don't know the terms necessarily, I don't handle this stuff, but like a resolution that came out of this board meeting that said that this company was allowed to set up this account on this exchange. So there's some pretty stringent requirements, and often they will come back to you and say that's not enough and make you do more. So if it is anything like an organizational KYC process from an exchange, I don't think a DAC or a DAO would even be able to get through that.
Okay.
I'd like to be wrong, but
yeah. So great feedback. We'll have to wait and see. I think in the end, Daniel will let us know. I know he's working really hard on this stuff, so I'm sure we'll get a good answer. Okay, and the last piece, just to comment on this idea, and generally part of what I and on the Monday Mic, where I was coming from, was this idea of having something that can persist outside of the people who are elected at each election. So somebody or group of people who actually take the mandate of treating Eden like an organization with onboarding experience and user experience, and what is the membership, how does the whole thing work for them as a member? Like right now, it's very ad hoc. We're just sort of randomly helping each other. And so the idea was to centralize that deliberately, where the chief delegates could basically run on who they'd like to put into these positions. And certain people would then be promoted or asked to fill these roles that are fixed, that reside in this DAC thing, but you don't need to have anything official necessarily to do that. And then those people would take care of the whole membership of Eden. And then the idea of growing Eden to be beyond just EOS, creating material and pamphlets and PowerPoints and a kid's book and how to do an Eden election in your local gymnasium with a deck of cards, like the bigger piece beyond just Eden on EOS. But what I've realized is like, I could do that tomorrow just as a person. Like, in fact, it doesn't have to be related to this group in the slightest. I've got 20 people in a Telegram channel that are very committed and dedicated to working on spreading the ideas of Eden. It doesn't have anything to do with this group. And so it can remain that way. I can just create something that has nothing to do with this. And if the people here want to support that with funding, they can run on that and do that. And then that group can maybe go to Pomelo to get funding and have it entirely independent from here and just leave it as separate things that don't have to talk. Other than like quarterly, and they should like be cordial, like talk, sure, but not dependent on each other, just separate missions and separate purpose. So I think that's kind of where I'm leaning now. The more I think about this, is just do something separate for that purpose.
Lovejoy?
Yeah, taking in a lot about what Chris just said and what Aaron was saying. I just think final statement on this topic is one that a legal entity of some nature is probably going to give us, ability to interact with the rest of the world in ways that we might not be able to otherwise. And that, to Chris's most recent point, there are other areas or other things where we might want to not, be, and we might want to exist in the gray area. And I think we should just be really clear about what that is and where we draw that line. And the other thing, to John's point earlier about, I just want to push back a little bit about the idea that we're not in charge. I think we should act as though we were elected. We were put forward by the first legit election. And if we make blunders, or if we go in a direction that we find that Dan or the Clarion team are, advising against, we'll find out, because we'll hit that wall, or we'll get smacked down by that. We'll get pushback. We should just go, and when we get pushback, we'll have to like listen to that and acknowledge that and respond. But I don't think we should tenderfoot around and try to psych ourselves out about where we should and shouldn't go. I think we should go where we think we should go, and then deal with the consequences. That's my opinion on that.
We could spend hours and thousands of dollars on this company idea only to get it then shot down. Wouldn't that be bad if we wasted all that time and energy?
Well, but all I'm suggesting is forming a working group with, isn't going to cost probably any money or very little, if anything, to just discuss like what the merits are. That's like for step one. Doesn't commit us to doing anything. We need more information before we can make any good decisions.
Yeah,
Randall, what do you think?
Yeah, so I think what we have to do is create a group, right? So I consider we, the board, to be like a separate businesses, right? Separate entities. So I'm KYC. I have my my own business, which is your support. I think Grey Mass has something going. I'm not sure about John, but if John also do have something going, we are all KYC'd, and we are like a consortium, right? Together, we are form an organization, and we just have to agree on what project we are about to build, okay? So if we agree on the project, then now we can together write a proposal on that project. We can decentralize the project by having a smart contract. That's what a DAC is, right? So once we have a smart contract, that means that each single entity is not responsible for running the DAC. The smart contract, which is going to be the agreement between us 6 is going to be running that project. That project is KYC'd because it's a combination of every single business. Then we put on Pomelo. If they want us to KYC ourselves, I'll bring my nonprofit KYC. Lovejoy, you bring yours. Everybody can bring theirs, right? Or the person who's going to be the chief delegate spearheading that project will use themselves as the KYC for the project, for the delegates. And that will solve the whole problem. That solves all this problem, and you don't have to worry about incorporating Eden, bringing lawyers, and money has to be spent and all this extra stuff. Maybe we can do that. Nobody's saying that it's a bad thing. We can deliberate on it. But I think if we really want to do something meaningful, we should form a consortium, which we already are. We will get someone to be the person who's going to lead the project. They can be the KYC. I can KYC, right, with my business, or Gray Mass can do that. I think the Bees are also incorporated, so they can do that.
We're not yet. We're not yet.
We're not yet. Okay. So the goal is to get funds so that we can help the community. So if we do it that way, we're not hurting anyone. Then we have a smart contract, multi-sig, and no one really controls that project. All of us control the project, and we just go from there. I think that will solve the problem.
John, what do you think?
Yeah, I still think we're in a sandbox and we don't know where the boundaries are, and we got to figure out where the boundaries are and what the hell, Dan and the sort of Clarion team have an idea for what this is going to be. And once we clarify that, if we want to do other things, then again we could go off and make our own DAOs and do whatever the hell that we like. But it feels like we're just a group and we don't know exactly what we're meant to be doing and how independent we are in doing it either. And how easily this hammer can come down, and that there's going to be another re-election. We've kind of wasted our time, so we should first clarify that before we kind of invest in other ideas and doing other things.
Okay. Is there somewhere else you want to take this meeting, John?
Yeah, well, I would say that's at the top of the list, but in terms of the website, again, was it that it is owned and operated by Ray? Is there a way that we can get it owned and operated by us? Again, part of Eden is being independent. We're not so independent if we can't even control our own website. So either we get control over the domain or something a bit more concrete, or I think we should make our own website rather than trust someone else to run it for us and have complete control over it and ask permission to change our own website.
But you've stumbled right back into the previous discussion, I'm afraid, with that comment, because we are all Eden members, and are you suggesting that it's more legitimate if a chief delegate or has the owner, what is even ownership in this sense, like, because the way that we're currently set up, like we're all independent, like agents essentially, acting as a consortium, like Randall was just saying. So
when I say ownership, access to the DNS records, like control over the thing, God, as high as you can get in terms of powers.
How does that transfer from election to election then? We just pass the username and password in the offboarding of Eden. Same plan that we have for the Twitter accounts and shit like that. So then every new set of chief delegates, we just hand over the keys to everything and they just take it. That's the plan.
Yep.
Okay, and I've been in contact with Ray recently, so I can bring that up to him, John, about the ownership of the DNS records and the like.
Cool.
All right.
Yeah,
anyone? So we have another discussion topic. Unallocated funds with Lovejoy and Aaron. Has there been any progress thinking on that?
No, I'm standing ready to distribute those funds to whatever this group deems appropriate for those various resources. Like, I'll take your feedback, and we can cut it up however we want. Like, I can throw some at Bees, some at EOS support, some at what have you. But I'm kind of waiting for kind of I'd like to have a discussion about that a little bit more, because my funds aren't really, I guess, like, I mean, Aaron's got so much that he could work on that the amount of funds would never touch. So mine's in a slightly different situation, because we can point this towards things that are a little bit more bite-sized. But I'm super flexible, so I haven't claimed the funds yet. They're just sitting there unclaimed. So, but we should put them to work sooner than later. I just haven't wanted to just unilaterally start like tossing them in people's accounts, and we need to have discussions about that.
So let's hear what Aaron has to say, and then maybe we can come back to that, Lovejoy.
Yeah, I'm in the same position. I haven't touched them. They are in the contract unclaimed. I don't have a point in time that I'm planning on claiming them yet. I have talked with my accountant, and as it stands right now, they're going to be applied to my income. So there will be a portion withheld for tax purposes unless we can get something changed in the contract so that way it's not me that's taking these funds in. Because it was me personally, and this is my account, like, it has to flow through me, and in the tax codes that means it's my income regardless of what I do with it. So I started reaching out yesterday. This meeting just happened yesterday, so I'm only 24 hours into starting to reach out to people, but I did send some messages to the Clarion team to try to start the conversation on this, to see if there is a way we can change how this works. If there's a way within internally, it can be claimed elsewhere, or I don't know what the options are. I'm at this point seeking advice from them on the best way to proceed with this, because it would certainly suck if, I don't know, 30% of it got taken by the government. I do not exist in a low tax bracket, and this does not help me be in any lower of a tax bracket.
Right. Chris?
In terms of if the account permissions is no longer just you, so if it was an MSIG account, does that change things in the eye of the law at that point where it's no longer just yours? So because the idea I had was that we could set up a temporary MSIG amongst us for each of our Eden accounts, because I think you can update permissions to be with an MSIG, right? So if we updated it so that we all then were like basically required to move the funds from your Eden account, you could then say, look, it wasn't even mine. The moment that the funds moved into this account, it wasn't your account. Therefore, it's not your funds.
I kind of had that thought. Like, you have your personal email address, right? And it's yours. Maybe it's Gmail or whatever email provider it could be. And then you might also have a work email account. And that work email account is owned by your company. And I kind of started looking at, could I consider this to be a work account? And could I consider this to be a part of Gray Mass? I don't know yet, but that is definitely something I'm exploring, because I think if I can justify that this account is Gray Mass, then I am no longer under US jurisdiction with these funds. Gray Mass is a Canadian federal corporation. Different tax laws will apply, and it will be a lot easier. Like, Gray Mass could take the funds, and then regardless of where they went after that, whether some was kept for Gray Mass for development, or whether some was paid out to other people, those could be expenses against the business that then offset that tax revenue, that profit or whatever. So the tax burden would drop drastically at that point. Like, I mean, down sub, I don't know, 5% or something, because we'd be able to write off those costs. So if I can somehow figure out a way to funnel these funds through Gray Mass, then whichever projects I could decide to support, whether it's somebody on this call or somebody external of this call, they could create an invoice to Gray Mass for that amount, and Gray Mass could just pay it out. And then we have the paper trail we need, we could distribute the funds, and we could help pay people. So I just don't know if that's possible. Like this, this arguably was my account. Just like you could say your business email address is your account, but who owns that account is what I'm trying to figure out a good way to establish. I don't want to screw myself. This isn't an insignificant amount of money, and I don't want to get stuck with a huge bill next year. So I'm trying to play it safe, and I don't want to commit to anything until I know how to handle this. I feel like each time we get a new person in any of our positions from a new country that has to apply like new tax laws, this is going to be a fun adventure for them.
And this might be an area where, again, potentially a legal structure may help us out a little bit, but I'm not really sure the ins and outs of that. But I don't know. I mean, you're right, because we're claiming it directly into like an account that's essentially a personal account, and then passing it on to wherever we're passing it on to. So
Yeah,
it's problematic.
But if I said to Aaron, hey, could you give this to Lovejoy? I forget what his EOS account is. I'll just send it to your account and you can forward it on for me. Like, surely that's not a taxable event, is it?
maybe.
So if I give you $1,000 and when we go to a bar, I give you $1,000, I just put it in your wallet and say, oh, you know, when Lovejoy comes, give it to him. Like, are you legally obligated to tell the taxman about that event at the bar?
I mean, that's a little different. I mean, if we were at the bar and you gave me $75,000, that might be a different story. I don't know. And I think it's a little bit different when it's a recorded transaction as opposed to a cash transaction like that. Like if you gave me money that entered my bank account and triggered some, I don't know, alert of some kind, you know, those FinCEN things.
Yeah.
I'm sure that would be a different situation too.
Well, yeah, that's to detect suspicious activity. It doesn't, you know, immediately make it illegal. Again, you're sort of just acting as a middleman. And again, could it just explain that, you know, it's your account that was, you know, trusted to delegate the funds. It doesn't mean that they're your funds. You could say they were never my funds. I was just trusted to move them. And, you know, it was just because, like, technically, if you wanted, you could have a bloody what you call it, you set up a contract on your own personal account, and then, you know, it listens to the claim action or whatever, and then it's, you know, and it does it in the same transaction, right? So you hit the claim and then your contract immediately just forwards it on. So in the exact same transaction, it's going from one contract, skips your account entirely essentially, and, you know, it never lands in your, you know, your account and goes elsewhere. Like, surely the tax office is not going to pick up on that and be like, oh, we checked the actions on the transaction. It says here on the second on the second action there's a transfer before it immediately went. Surely that will be good enough. Like, I'm
sure there are gray areas here. It's the tolerance of risk at this point.
And maybe this is not a rabbit hole we want to delve into here. Let's go back to, so Lovejoy was saying that he is open for suggestions about his funds. Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
Save it for Pomelo.
That's something I'd considered. We could use my pot like a way to supercharge our Pomelo campaigns. That's one interesting idea.
I like that.
Just depends on if we realistically get Pomelo during our term, which there's a chance. I mean, I don't want to discredit the effort. I know how hard they're working to get this online, but there's a chance that we might not be a group anymore when that's a viable option.
But
do it after the fact.
You could, yeah, exactly. You could just claim it it sits in your account, and then even though you're not an elected representative, you can still follow through with your promise of using it and then support Camilla pitches.
Yeah, but I think, I don't know, the community is keen for the quick wins, so we shouldn't hold on to the funds any longer than we have to. Let's put them out there, get the money to work, and come up with results.
Well, yeah, there could be nuance here. Like, this doesn't have to be like all or nothing either, you know? So
I don't know exactly how you said something that kind of triggered this thought in my mind, but there might also be a possibility that I somehow actually take the income, but then I start allocating other funds towards projects from gray mass. I don't know, that might be another area I can explore as well, like an equivalent amount. It's still gonna get hit with taxes though, which is honestly my main drive right now, is like, this is community funds. How do we
You can write
maximize
it
it?
off, right? You write it off from your business. So I think for now, that would be the best option. The immediate solution is to hold on to the funds, right? And then you distribute money from your own business for the time being, so that you don't get hit with anything that you don't want to get hit with, until maybe the clearing team comes up with a solution where you can just claim the money into an incorporated treasury. You know, I think
Yeah.
for the time being.
I mean, it's gonna, if I take it, it's gonna get hit with taxes, period. That's
Well,
kind of the core problem.
Why don't you just take it then, and then save the rough amount that you think you'll get hit with taxes, and then distribute the rest. And then, you know, once you clarify the whole tax question, then again, you can either use it to pay for your taxes or not.
My hope is that we can come up with a solution that's part of the contract, and then that might solve some of our other problems as well. Like, if there was a way to say, I don't want this, put it in a community pool that the chief delegates can allocate somehow, then that removes all that burden on top of it. But I don't know what the level of effort is.
You would have done that with your, you know, smart contract applied to your own account and the transfer thing. Surely, in a tax world, because yeah, you're not even holding it. Like,
I haven't claimed it yet.
Yeah, but yeah. So again, you listen to the claim on your, you know, your own personal smart contract against your account, and the funds never land in your account. Therefore, it's not yours.
Potentially.
whatever
right.
we,
Yeah.
this is an
Oh, go
area.
ahead,
Let's this is just like an area where I feel like we're gonna need some discussion. I would really appreciate some more, like, whatever you learn, Aaron, whatever we can gather, any lawyers we need to talk to, tax accountant people, like, find the creative, least damaging solution for us to distribute these funds. Like, because I don't want to end up with crazy tax burden, but, you know, just because I was trying to distribute money to the community.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that it's a problem worth highlighting and maybe exploring solutions with the community with, and I'm happy to share what I learn. It's only going to be applicable to me as a US citizen and anybody else that is under the same laws, and it'll be different for every country, essentially. But playing it safe is probably good, so that way none of us get burned as individuals.
Cool. So yeah, let's table this.
Yep.
And our next topic is, I'm sure the community would love to hear some project updates. So let's maybe start with John. How's Violet Garden doing? Do you have any updates for us?
Yeah, I've been looking into the NFT solution. It seems like, because initially I wanted to get ads on the platform, but it's going to be harder to sort of make that happen without, you know, NFTs as a sort of, you know, foundation, because, you know, in the future, then, you know, people could trade the NFTs, and then whoever owns the NFTs of the post can actually determine what goes on as a yard. As you may have seen, Voice have pushing this new NFT standard called Simple Assets Plus, but they say they've released a special specification, but it seems like they haven't, because I can't find the damn thing. And it doesn't look like it's open source. So they're advertising a standard that no one else can apparently adopt, which is fantastic. So I reached out to someone who's going to try engage voice and see what the hell their goal is. Otherwise, I'll probably be developing on atomic assets. In the meantime, I've been working on creating a better development environment and a better developer experience when I do hire new developers. As at the moment, it's pretty like the, just so much stuff only I kind of know. So I'm kind of doing documentation and stuff. So yeah, there's less time it takes for new developers to jump on the platform and get stuff done and come up with results. So sort of just paying off some tech debt in a sense.
Did you check with Crypto Lions, John?
Yeah.
Okay. They made it. So if they can't tell you the answer, then yeah, you're pooched.
Yeah.
Cool. Randall, why don't you go next?
Yeah, so for EOS support, we just started in our bots in Telegram. So that's one thing that we started doing. We've been answering questions in the Telegram groups now. It's something that we are trying to improve on. Number two, we just designed a payment algorithm. So now it makes it easier to actually, I would say, cap how much one can make for working as an agent. And also we have a certain amount of EOS an agent can get in a day. So, and all this is being automated right now. So for now, we're gonna do it on an Excel sheet that has been completed. It looks very nice, but we're gonna automate the process. So that's also something we are working on and we are finishing up. We are also hiring bilingual agents, but that has been a lot of work because we have to write rules and regulations, and also KYC people as well on top of Eden KYC. And these rules and regulations takes time, but we are almost done with the rules and regulations on how an agent has to act and how they have to behave in the community, so that they don't do something very bad. So we actually done with that actually. So we are going to be onboarding our first 5 or so agents. So things are looking good from that aspect. Mm.
Great to hear.
Can I chime in with a
Yeah,
question?
go ahead.
Randall,
Mhm.
I was on a call yesterday morning with Ami and Hernan and other people, and they were talking about potentially how EOS in a box could kind of connect up with EOS support to the point where, this is maybe off in the future, but wanted to get your thoughts. I thought it was really cool. The idea that we could do multi-sig account creation using EOS in a box with EOS support. So EOS support could essentially create accounts and do custodial stuff because we'd have multi-sig, because we'd be able to do make sure that no individual agent would have the ability to do anything nefarious.
Yes. So I spoke to Ami on this. We had a 45 minutes meeting, and we have things in place. How we are going to verify users. We have that in place. I'm working on that. But the most important thing was to make sure that our agents are well vetted, so that the user experience doesn't get destroyed in that a user gets scammed, right? So I think I spoke to Aaron, I think a couple of days back, and he actually emphasized how important it is that we keep the users safe, make sure that their information is not leaked, and that no one goes after them, right? Privacy is very important. So because of that, we've decided that we have to tighten it up, because the community is paying the support agents to do what is right? So we want to make sure that all the people who are coming on board they understand that because we are paying you. This is a job, right? It's a very important job. So we want the support agents to be, I would say, to be understandable that if you are getting KYC'd, it's for the best. Because if something happens and you try to run, we will come after you, basically. So, yeah, it's a good thing that we are doing. Yeah.
And all agents are Eden members, correct?
Yes, all agents are good standing Eden members in that you have to be a person who has been in the community for some time, right? So we have tiers, right? So we have a beginner, and we have intermediate, and we have an expert. So the beginners, you are still KYC, but you don't do as much, right? And the intermediates are supervising the beginners. Then we have the experts. The experts, they do a lot more. They supervise, they double check articles, they double check to make sure that people are doing what they're supposed to be doing. And we have admins, right? And the admins are going to be supervising to make sure that people are doing what they're supposed to be doing. How are the conversations going in these group chats? Because the conversation cannot be changed. You can delete it, you can change it, right? So if we see something that is a red flag, then we will go after it and try to figure out what is going on, what is happening, and prevent anything from happening, you know? So.
Cool. Thanks for
So
details.
yeah, Aaron, you came out with a blog post, I think last week. It was very interesting. Maybe you can give a quick summary for those who didn't read it and perhaps some feedback that you got from it.
Sure. I also have kind of as follow-up.
Yeah, and your updates. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're talking about kind of the bigger vision post, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe we table that until right after the project stuff or some point later. To follow up on the account creation stuff, we have scripting in place. We are at a point now where we can start doing manual bulk account creation codes. And when I was talking with Randall a couple days ago, maybe last week or something, we had talked about giving him a bunch of codes to be able to give away accounts through the support services. So that's really close. We're going to be giving away account codes to other people as well. It's just going to be a URL that you give the user, and the user will put it in their browser, and it will walk them through creating an account using Anchor. Right now it requires Anchor just because we haven't expanded that out into anything else, but user won't have to pay. We'll eat the cost. We'll probably consider that part of the budget that we're using for this stuff. So that system's coming online. I just need to find the time to take the tool we created and start generating like hundreds of codes to be able to give out. I would say to anybody on this call, anybody listening to this call, if you have a community, if you have a reason to give away accounts, this is kind of our stress test of our system. We want to give out accounts to groups that can give them away effectively. We don't have a way to police our system right now. That's why there's no free accounts. So if there are processes that anyone has that verifies that, like, oh, this is a real person that needs or wants an EOS account for some reason, like, feel free to reach out. We'll be doing this probably only for a limited time. I don't know. We'll see how successful it goes. Maybe other Eden boards like this will want to do that in the future, and we're happy to facilitate that. But that's something we want to do now as a way to help with the onboarding that we kind of pitched. In terms of the actual project of making onboarding easier that I ran on, we announced the name of our web wallet within the last couple of days. It's Unicove. We have our half unicorn, half mermaid logo that's swimming around. And we are pretty far along in the actual redesign of the product itself. That is going to be where we take all the technology we're creating that will allow account creation anywhere on any application. And we're going to like eat our own dog food and build it into this application kind of as independent silos. So we're hoping to get the new design up soon, and we are just starting to prototype out the actual process for that. We're looking into crypto payment processors, so we can, you don't need a credit card. You could pay in EOS, you could pay in whatever other cryptocurrency you might want. And we're also looking at some of the various on-ramps for purchasing crypto, and if there's ways that we can work this into the flow as well. Because once you're on the network, you also may need tokens for some reason. So we kind of are exploring adding that in as well. But our primary goal still is to make it so that, like, if somebody goes to Violet Garden, like, and doesn't have an EOS account and wants to participate, they could just create one right there without, like, oh, go to this other thing and do this and save these. And like, we want it so that apps can onboard users themselves. They'll be full EOS users, but that experience and that immersion into the one thing that pulled them into the ecosystem is important, and we want to try to maintain that. So development hasn't started on that aspect yet, but it's very deep into the planning phases at this point. So that's on my project side and what I ran on, where we're at right now.
Awesome. And at least for EOSBs, in giving out free accounts, some of the people that join us don't have EOS accounts, and we've been using Wombat Wallet for that purpose. But we have different tiers, and there are a few times where someone's really talented, has been in EOS a long time, and lives in Vietnam, for example, and doesn't want to pay for an EOS account. So perhaps for those, so yeah, I'm certainly interested in your stress test there. But before
Absolutely.
I give my update, let's go around let's keep going to Chris. Get any updates?
Yes, since my project is just kind of what I'm doing generally, I'll just give an update of what I've done generally for the past week. So I finished all the notes for the last week's call and put it up on YouTube with all the jazz there. That's done. I finished an interview with EOS Microloans and posted it, edited it, posted it. So that was a really good one. I have done the most recent EdenProxy.org run through. So I've did the full reshuffle with the recent election results. I've cleaned up my Excel spreadsheet, which is on the site for anybody to go click through, and they can check the values. I pulled it all from the tables on the blockchain. So in terms of everyone's ratings and as well as everyone's position in the recent election. So yeah, any of you guys, well, it won't matter. Next month I'll do it again, but if you want to have your voice known, by all means, go to EOS Rate, use your Eden account and rate VPs. I have spoken with someone from the Chinese community who is working on forking the code to create Chinese Eden. And we're going to do sort of my suggested plan, which was to start with the membership only and then expand from there. The idea, so they've been in touch now with the Clarion team, and they're working through that. And one of the questions now is what website? Like, is it ideally we'd use the same server and the same sort of domain organization, like the same domain characteristic. I don't know how you phrase it, but anyway, the one that we're currently using, we need to create like another spin-off one. So is that going to be in the same location, or is it going to be a brand new location? That's to be sort of figured out. I've suggested that they kind of quote this work, and whatever costs they think it would cost for them to do this, we should request, and I'm offering to do this on their behalf, to go to the ENF to request reimbursement for the work to start these Edens, just like the Clarion team did. So I think that's it's perfectly rational to do it that way. So that's good. We had the Eden expansion group, it's called. It's a working group working on expanding the ideas of Eden. It was a really fruitful call, 2 hours. A lot of good engagement there. Some really smart people who are doing some great things, working on a kid's book, working on a few different PowerPoint presentations, like more than one are going on at once to try to simplify the process. One shows like how to do the deck of cards and how you could break it up. Discussions about how to really simplify the one pager to hand to people on sort of what you really need to know to understand this. Like if you're walking into a room of 100 people and you want to, okay, everybody, we're going to break into groups and I'm going to hand out cards, and you're going to like, how do you have that conversation in a really succinct way to explain in 30 minutes or less, here's what you're about to do, here's why you're doing it. And of course, what you're solving for can always be different. So that's ongoing and will continue. And Aaron, one of the gentlemen, wants to give EOS, like basically he's come away from the meeting he had on last Wednesday, so yesterday, that people need to be onboarded into EOS. The concerns of inability to create a history that's immutable, telling because social media is so censored. Violet Garden is an obvious potential solution for this. And in order to do that, we need EOS accounts. So this is Chuck. He's I'm gonna, after what you said a second ago, but you can do these batch account creations. It's exactly what he needs. He needs a bunch of accounts that he can go and in person help people figure out how to open an account and then join Eden and get onto Violet Garden. So they can then start to document their story and the history in a way that's immutable. And so that I think is pervasive. It's beyond what we're doing here, and it's really important. So that was a really great outcome from that group. Yeah, lots. Yeah, it was a really interesting group. So I'm really glad we're working on that. And that's what's also making me think that we can just do this outside of this chief delegate thing. Like, there's no reason why they have to be intermingled. And I think that's maybe, you know, in light of what you mentioned a lot, John, independence, right? Let's create an independent group. And if the idea is to spread Eden around the world because it gives people opportunity to do democracy differently and come to consensus and kind of dismantle the current system, that's where my heart's at personally. Other than that, anything else exciting? That is, I didn't do a lot of work yesterday and the day before because the weather here was wicked. So I've done a lot of my winter planning, and I'm hourly. So all of my hours are tracked with what I've done each day. I'm going to create a website through Notion. Josh Seymour's been doing something with Notion that looks really awesome to do a Notion website. Very simple. So I'm going to do the same thing for the transparency bit. So I haven't really dug into anything to do with the transparency stuff yet, other than formulating a structure of how this is going to work. I started to look at the videos from the election to just create notes from that. So that's been started as well. And oh yeah, read a lot about Pomelo and this DAO stuff. So I'm really educating myself on this. Pomelo especially, spent a couple hours today really just making sure I understand this. And I'm going to start to create some YouTube videos for Pomelo pitches and make sure I can help support people with their, is it a public good? How do we frame what you're doing to make sure it's a public good, to have it qualify, and just making sure I understand all the nuance there. So that's it for me.
Awesome to hear. So I'll go next with EOSBs. There's been a few updates recently. We've gotten to a point where, at least for Bs that are going to get funded with our Eden funds, we've maxed out the recruitment, and so we are still encouraging all our hives to recruit, but on a wait list when we get more funds. So what we're at right now is 6 hives. We're going to launch on November 1st, paid marketing for the first time in EOS. So that's really exciting. Those 6 hives are English, Spanish, Turkish, Korean, Vietnamese, and French. And these are the 6 hives that have started the earliest, are most mature in their recruitment, and have just been the most active in EOSB so far. So yeah, so that's happening on November 1st. And we also recently updated our funding distribution system or algorithm. It was pretty basic. Coming from myself, it was pretty basic. It had mostly rewarded hives based on hive size. And with the help of the Princess Bee of the Korean hive, Sang Young, we've developed a new system where we've reduced hive size importance. We've added GDP per capita, and then we also took Google Trends, Bitcoin search Google Trends. They rank countries against each other, and so the idea is, like for example, in Turkey, they rank 4 out of 100 countries, and so they have a better, or not a better, but a more active crypto culture there. So they should get allocated more of the funds compared to the other hives. at least on a relative basis. So yeah, the funding distribution algorithm, I'm still talking to amazing potential candidates. Recently, a person named Brian, he was formerly of EOS Nairobi, had an amazing call with him that in the whole kind of vote buying thing with the BPs a couple of years ago, he wasn't able, he kind of got kicked back in the rankings. They weren't able to receive funding anymore, so they've moved on. His new company is called Kotani Pay. He's based out of Kenya, and he's doing this thing where I believe they make phones. They make flip phones, like cheap flip phones that you can transfer crypto through, and it sounded incredible what he's working on. And so he's a very busy guy, but I've at least convinced him to spend a couple hours a week with a Swahili hive. And so Swahili is the main language of Kenya and a few other countries in Africa. I mean, it's a really big language, and he's an extremely intelligent and incredible guy. And the other person I spoke to today, her name is Asal. She would be the leader of the Persian hive, and she is an influencer on Twitter, and yeah, and Persian's also a big language, and she is really on board. She's not really like an EOS OG, but she's been in crypto for since 2017, and just talking to her today, and you know, her main comment again about the FUD, and she's like, and she was telling me like, yeah, I looked into EOS and it seemed like such an amazing system and platform, and I didn't understand why all these people are saying EOS is dead. It's like, yeah, we got a FUD problem, but we're not dead. Check this out. She loved it, and so she's joining. So that's great. So yeah, we're still recruiting. We are putting together a fundraising plan, and yeah, we're getting organized. November 1st coming up. We're trying to get everything organized. We're going to test our system for the first time. Everything's been on paper so far, and so we're going to test this out. I actually think that it's a good amount of funds for us. It's not so much. There's probably going to be mistakes that are made in the system. So like through the rest of the year, we're gonna test the system with a modest amount of funds, and then hopefully we can raise more in 2022. Randall.
Yeah, so Chris, I just wanted to go back on the Chinese Eden community formation. I don't know if if you're up for suggestion, but I think they should have their own domain name, and they should host their own Eden OS system. I think that would be like the most ideal thing, to have some independence, and also to create that what's the word, anti-fragile system. Yeah. And for Aaron, with the account creation, for your support, when you give us the codes, one thing that we are going to do is we will verify each individual. So one phone number, one account creation, one phone number, one account creation, at least to prevent one person from getting 1,000 accounts. So that's one thing that we are going to put in place to at least assure you guys that we are effectively going to distribute the accounts the best way possible.
Awesome.
Lovejoy, I know you're not working on a specific project, but is there any update that you want to give the community?
I'd encourage everyone to check out James Mart's excellent primer on Fractal Democracy that he released this week. I had an early look at it and did a few minor edits, and was just really blown away by what an incredible resource that's going to be for the whole community. Other than that, I've just been trying to keep up with what everyone here is doing, and having some really fruitful conversations with other members of the Eden, like other Eden delegates, and listening to what people are up to at the different from like our entire organization. Yeah, I'm gonna keep digging into DAOs, the cooperative side of things, and what else? Yeah, just a lot of the same stuff I do every week. The Tuesday show with Manfredi was really funny and fun and informative, and we went deep into EOS in a box. And yeah, I'm just trying to be the synthesizer of all the different things that are happening in a lot of different ways. So I really appreciate like all these different initiatives and the points where they're coming together. So I'm here to support and help out how I can.
So Lovejoy, Brandon. So
Lovejoy is probably better because we too many Brandons
he prefers Lovejoy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we are working hard to get everything together, and once we have all the pieces together and we have a lot more agents, we will tap your shoulder to come help us with the administration services.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so I'm just throwing that out there that we will. And no, it's not like a difficult job. We just have to make sure that everyone is being responsible. So
Yep.
Since you are one of the main members who's going to be on the multi-sig eventually, you know, we will just reach out to you at least so that you can be incorporated.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm standing by, and EOS support has got my support. I love it's so necessary right now that we have something like that. All people have just been slipping through the cracks for 3 years, and for the first time we can help catch them. And then when we can start adding account creation and all these other components to the process, it's gonna be amazing.
We're growing up as a community, and it's great to see. All right, so finally, guys, let's talk about our next meeting and meeting frequency. I'll read this quote from Eve that Chris supplied. He feels that the board should meet twice per week, and the next election should be in 3 months. Frequent iterations in this nation stage, in my opinion, in his opinion, would be a great way to move fast. And with frequent meetings, you also have a compressed, very targeted agenda that would turn into a series of mini targets, those being funded by the group, so the budget is spent as a unit, you being stewards. Aaron, what do you think?
I mean, overall, I think it's probably a good idea. I don't know. There's a lot of external factors that seem like they'd be roadblocks in making that happen. I mean, we kind of dove a little bit into the financial complications, both from us personally, as well as from creating an organization, both of which I think sadly are problems that need to be solved before that could be incredibly effective. And again, the launch of Pomelo, the timeline on the launch of Pomelo kind of dictates when that's going to be able to happen as well. Overall, though, I mean, it would make sense if we were an organization that could do this. It's just, how do we get there? We could have the meetings, like there's no hurdles in the way of that, but.
Right, is it worth having more meetings before figuring out all that stuff, I guess, is the question.
I don't know that I have the answer necessarily.
Yeah, I think it'd be beneficial. It would just help us keep momentum. And again, the meetings don't have to be too long either. But yeah, more frequent meetings would be good.
Randall?
Yeah, frequent meetings is fine. That will help us a lot. But the election, I think 3 months is just too short, because you need a little bit of stability, especially when you are building, right? So you don't want to do this kind of thing. right? Because all the projects that we have here are great projects that if we give ourselves time, right? We give ourselves, let's say the 6 months, we can really do something special and get the communities to accept and embrace these projects and engrave the projects into the EOS community, right? So what are some of the examples? Ballot Garden is beautiful, all right? When you go to the Chinese community, that's all that they talk about. They love it, right? But it takes time to really develop such a great product. So we want to give the person who is in charge of that project a chance for them to really shape this, right? So by the next election, we will have something concrete and something so beautiful that the community has been accustomed to, right? Aaron is creating. I mean, Aaron doesn't have to be here for him to be known, right? So his situation is a little different, but still, whatever that he ran on, which is user onboarding, is so key, right? And that's what we EOS support is running on. That's what EOSB is running on as well. So we are now onboarding users. I mean, I would say agents, right? And you're about to go online. Jesse, you're about to go online maybe November 1st. But once you go online, you will have a lot of challenges, right? You need to have time to really fix this challenges that you will have, right? So I think overall, 6 months to me is great to actually get things done and for the community to see what you've done within 6 months. But if we do 3 months and people don't get anything done or they're halfway through their project, the FUD is going to come out, right? People will start to say, you see, these guys couldn't do anything, right? But we want to actually show the community that 6 months, this is what we've done, right? And I think that would be awesome if we can do that.
Yeah, I also support 6 months. It seems like just from reading the Telegram messages that the Clarion team is thinking 6 months and the EOS Foundation team is thinking 3 months. There was a message from Dan when he was responding to the whole issue of English fluency that he had said, well, we got 6 months to figure it out. And then Eve had mentioned 3 months a few times. So yeah, me personally, I feel a lot more comfortable 6 months. I think that gives us a really solid amount of time because we've shown in this call that there's a lot of issues, complex issues that it's going to take some time to figure out. And I think that what I'm most interested in as a group here is proposing the first set of bylaws and mission statement. And I think that we're going to need some time on that. So anyone else have thoughts on this?
Yeah, I would say, again, it really depends on the boundaries of the sandpit, what exactly it is that we're trying to, do. And then, once we define that, again, maybe we can entertain the ideas of, again, making so that chief delegates are a bit more like board members. They're not actually doing the day-to-day work, and then they can be people that are, hired and they actually paid, the funding, and, they actually, do more of the sort of day-to-day work and, put the funding or whatever towards, the projects and stuff like that. So provide that ongoing stability. And so again, if there's a sort of strong sort of sub leadership, when the board members come through, they can go, yeah, no, we're pretty happy with where things are at. We're not going to make too many decisions. We're not going to do, too much. Because again, we also got to think about what kind of time requirements, are there. Like if we want to, truly make Eden, cooler, some of it's going to require, our time in order to get stuff done. Whereas if we create a system where, that's sort of delegated to, whatever you want to call it, maybe the CEO of Eden or whatever, then again, they can do the day-to-day work, and then the board can just, oversee that, using the opinions and stuff of the community and making sure that, the CEO is doing what he's meant to do. But again, it's too hard to determine what the hell, that can look like, if that's worth doing, until we determine, again, where the boundaries are set. And then again, how much power do we have? Because people are talking about like a 6-month thing or 3-month thing. Like, is that set in stone, or can there be a re-election at any time that Clarion determines? Or we need to figure that out as well. Yeah.
So I think we, as the delegate, we are going to set it in stone right now. Okay, that 6 months is a good time. We were elected, and this is our mandate to make sure that we bring projects that we can work on. 3 months is just too short. So we are saying that it's 6 months. Anyone in the Eden community who has something to say about that, they should come to delegate. They should come to delegation, bring it on board. We are going to work on consensus, and based on the consensus from the 6 of us, we decide on that. If people are going to throw us to the side, then what the hell are we doing? Right? We make decisions, people don't agree with it, then one person cannot just say that I don't agree with it, screw you guys, right? Then we are just wasting time. We've been chosen, we are here, we reach consensus. We are going by consensus. That's the only way we can be able to see what the community wants. So for now, 6 months, if that's what we've agreed on, that's what we've agreed on. We can't just change things just like that, on and off, on and off. It doesn't work that way. I think that would be bad for all of us, right? So we have power, right? We shouldn't think that we don't have any power. We have power. It's just that we are the new guys in town, so we are trying to navigate, right? So we will navigate. We will take our time, and we'll make decisions. All right. I'm a CEO of my company. I make decisions all the time, and I pay a lot of people. So it's not like someone will come here and bully me. Nobody's going to bully me, right? Or no one is going to come and bully Great Mass, right? Nobody's going to do that. He's the CEO of his company. Everyone that's here is doing something in the community. Chris is doing things in the community. He has been doing it for a long time. He knows what he's doing, right? So we all have power. We just have to put it to work. And the people who don't agree, they have to explain why they don't agree. And then we will reach consensus on that.
Do we have a 6 out of 6 or at least a 5 out of 6 consensus on 6 months?
What were you gonna say? Sorry.
No, I'm just going by what the smart contract says. It says 6 months, and as far as I'm leaning on code is law right now.
Well,
and the intent of code is law is there as well. So 6 months, as far as I'm concerned.
And we don't control the contract. Like that is administered by the Clarion team at this point. They could change that without our permission. Like that is a power they have. And then above and beyond that, there's a foundation that is funding this initiative. I mean, it was a donation, but we have to take into consideration their will as well as these decisions are being made, because they're the ones that are going to potentially fund it in the future. So we're not necessarily the CEOs here. Like for our companies, we can make unilateral decisions because that is a solid power structure. We're representatives here. We're not CEOs here. We were put here by votes, and we can be removed by votes. So this is a political position, essentially. And we need to be careful if we're trying to wield power that we don't actually even have. We can make a recommendation. I think that that's probably our strongest thing, and maybe our voice is much stronger because of where we are right now. But somebody else ultimately has the keys.
And I'll just add that I think 6 months is an adequate amount of time, and that 3 months is fairly an inadequate amount of time. So,
and I guess on that topic, I would also agree that 6 months is better than 3 months. 3 months, I think my big kicker for 3 months is that that's going to put us right at like the beginning of the year, holidays, participation will be low, like planning elections should come. We should try to find times of the year that it actually is suitable for that type of activity.
That's a good point.
It's a bad time, and it's just not enough time.
Yes, both.
Yeah, two things. So Aaron, you mentioned one thing about the ENF having funded Eden, and we need to be cognizant of basically the stakeholders in this thing, and we don't have unilateral power. I did ask Eve specifically in that back and forth when it was referenced his DAC, have we incorporated as a DAC and then applied to Pomelo for funding? I had asked him, because when he suggested you should do more elections, then you could have more iterations, and he made the comment that you'd go through funds faster, I think. So Telegram nuance, but I think the point that I said is like, no, we wouldn't spend any more funds if we had an election sooner, because 5% is 5%, regardless of the election or having an election. So then I asked about funding. Can you give any insight about how the ENF plans to approach funding Eden in the future? And his response was an up finger pointing to his question about whether we're going to go to Pomelo looking for funding as a group. So, I mean, it's to be interpreted many ways. It's not a hard no. I mean, it was a suggestion. So just keep in mind, there's no guarantee that the ENF has an appetite to continually fund this Eden. That might have been a bootstrap, and maybe that's part of what he's trying to get across, which is kind of what I'm thinking, right? Eve is a pretty deliberate guy, doesn't waste time. So I think he meant that when he said we should consider going to Pomelo as a group to request funding to then spend on more projects or put it back into the treasury even for the upcoming election. Like maybe that's part of our function as chief delegates is to fund for future elections. Yeah, so there's no guarantees there. And then definitely in terms of like the power the Clarion team has, we're here as consensus builders. To me, that's what I think this solves for. We can all have different opinions on what this thing's even solving for. My opinion is it solves for good consensus builders. I think we're all hopefully somewhat reasonable about listening to other people, what they have to say, and not just being, bull in a china shop and no, I have an opinion, fuck all y'all. That's not why we're here, right? We're here to work together. So part of who we're working with is the Clarion team and EOS Network Foundation and the rest of our community. So as much as we want to be firm, Randall, I don't disagree with you. Like your points are absolutely valid. We just got to do it in a way that's like, hey, Clarion team, look, like 3 months out, we're not going to finish all these things we planned for. Like cut us a break, and give us guidance. Like that's why we had asked in advance of this election, when's the next election going to be? Tell us now, because it's really useful, not only in the pitch, but just after now we're here, we need clarity to know what our runway is, to know what we can achieve. And I think that's the request we should collectively just ask of the Clarion team. Give us a decision. Like, let us know now. Don't wishy-washy, maybe. Just let us know. If it's 3 months, okay, fine. So be it, right? Maybe we'll disagree, but at least we'll have clarity. I think that's the best we could ask for at this point.
Yeah. And to add just onto the complications with the foundation, we also the justification does not stop at the foundation, because the foundation needs to request funding from the block producers, like for them to be funded to be able to help fund these things. And then above and beyond that, the token holders elect the BPs. So ultimately, like in this large chain of stakeholders, we have token holders as like our primary beneficiary. If what we're doing is good for the token holders and them electing the BPs, who will then fund the foundation, who then helps us get that funding within this governance structure. It's kind of a messy arrangement, but that's what exists. But just knowing that whole chain, I think, is important.
Yeah, so just to clarify my point, so I was not trying to say that individuals are going to just come up with what has to be done and we just do it. I was just saying that when we come to meetings and we have decisions to make, we just reach consensus basically. And also if the community have something to, talk about and they bring it to our attention and we can help, we reach consensus on that. That's what I meant. So I just wanted to clarify on that. And Chris, thanks for, the points that you made. That's very important. I think that's where we were going. That's where we're going in the beginning when we were talking about creating a DAC, right? So the whole point was to organize ourselves as a consortium and pretty much create a project that we can put on Pomelo and try to get like some fundraising going, some donations going so that we can fund Eden, fund most of the community's projects, and move from there. I think if we do that, we are going to make a lot of progress. So that's another thing. Now, in terms of organization, we have the holacracy, right? We have the holacracy system that we set up, the structure. It's still ongoing. We still have it. So I think that can also help with some of the Eden organization, because we are the CMO arm of Eden structure, right? So you support EOSBs as well. So when you go on Slack, you see that we are in this group and we have created connections with all the individual projects that is working on something that is related to Eden on EOS, right? So we interact with every single one, like Using the Box, Gray Mass, we have Felix, we have Patrick, Nova Crypto. So we have all these guys. So we are able to communicate easily. And I'm just bringing this up to say that we still have that holacracy organization. Joshua is doing a great job. He's still working on it. So we have to still continue to use that, right? So that we are better organized, that even when you're not elected, you are still in the game. You are still a participant of the whole structure or the whole system. So we just have to keep going, and we shouldn't shy away from challenges. And there's one challenge that we have to form the first Eden board and make it very, I would say, powerful or efficient, whatever the word might be, you know.
Not necessarily in this call, but in maybe one of our next calls, I'd like to kind of talk more about this group approaching Pomelo for funding. Yeah, I don't have to dive.
So when is our next call, guys?
1 week.
In a week?
That'd be my proposal for now, until we decide that we're ready for twice a week, if you guys want to do that. But I think,
Yeah, so same time next week. Are we all good with that?
Yep.
I would be keen on sooner, but yeah, if 1 week is what you guys want. I'd say that the most important call, again, there's too much ambiguity about what the scope of Eden is, and so the biggest priority should be getting on a call with Dan and Clarion and really figuring out what exactly the scope is.
Should we try to invite them onto our next call?
Yeah, we'll invite them onto a call that best suits them. I think we're better off, twisting it. So, if there's a time that's more suitable for Dan, then we should do so. Because, if he can get on, then again, he'll be able to lay down the law and provide more clarity much quicker. Otherwise, if he's not there, then Clarion will be like, oh yeah, we think Dan feels like this or whatever. And it won't be as, efficient as it could be.
I'm open to doing that call that you're suggesting.
But John, you've been in contact with Dan, right?
Nah. He'll drop in the Violet Garden Telegram channel every now and then, but he doesn't respond to my DMs. I imagine he's just got too many to look through.
What were you gonna say, Lovejoy?
Well, I'd be open to trying to get that call put together and have that in advance of our next meeting. And I can reach out to the Clarion team and Dan and try to make that happen if you guys want to do that.
Yeah, I do at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we have to.
And then,
It could maybe be about the mission statement. I feel like that's a call unto itself also. Just figuring out.
Well, the mission statement will be determined by what the scope is, and the scope was, whatever Clarion and Dan sort of define, I suppose.
That's what I mean. Yeah, it could be one and the same.
Is there a particular day that I should suggest, or a couple days that might work okay for you guys that is prior to next Thursday?
I'm free.
Yep, wide open.
Anyone else?
I think it should be the other way around, Lovejoy. Find out what time that's good for them, and then we'll ask us, or then
Yeah,
we don't all have to make it, but yeah.
Well, I was mostly looking for anyone that's like definitely not this day, or something in case there was any. Just to I have you all now, so It'd be good to just, for my own knowledge, what target to shoot for.
Mostly Clarion is in like North America sort of time zones, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Right. So this time, like when we started, it's kind of after work, right after work, 6 p.m. Eastern. Any day, pretty much for me.
All right. I'm going to propose Tuesday the 26th and see if I can, and maybe they'll not be available, but maybe I'll start there and then I'll let you guys know how it goes from there.
Good.
Cool. All right. So that concludes our call. Thank you for listening if you made it this far. And please leave a comment below the video. We really would love some feedback on these issues that we're tackling. DM us on Telegram, leave a comment, and yeah, thanks for watching, guys.
Oh, one thing I'll add, Jesse has been doing wicked stuff, but getting all the bees to translate these. So the notes, I've made them throughout the call now. So this will be out tomorrow. I'll get this out with the notes. And so Jesse, thank you. So anyone watching, if you want to read about this in Turkish, Korean, it's French,
Spanish,
lots.
or
Yeah.
actually
So,
did Spanish come through? I don't think so,
I
actually.
don't think there's no Spanish yet. So
Okay.
sorry, Spaniards, but everyone else, you got to. But they'll be in the notes. I update the notes in YouTube. So if you go and you don't see your language of preference, come back later maybe, and it'll be there. I'm adding it. So yeah.
Mandarin, you missed there. There
Mandarin.
was the other one. Yeah.
Cool.
Right on.